passionate about Cleveland sports.
He's going in! Touchdown!
Browns, Indians, Cavs, the Big Ten, and more.
Cleveland is a city of champions once again!
Andy and Jarid, Cleveland and beyond.
A swing and a drive! To deep right!
Here are your hosts, Andy Billman and Jarid Foster.
Hello and welcome, Andy and Jarid, Cleveland and beyond. He's Andy Billman. I'm Jared Watson, and this podcast is a part of Waiting for Next Year. Check them out, original Cleveland sports reporting at waitingfornextyear.com. This is our college preview show, and we're going to take a look at our big three, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and that team up north. We're going to have Cleveland.com's Nathan Baird on to talk with us about the Buckeyes' upcoming season. We're currently recording during this beautiful start to the Buckeye season as Ohio State is up 28-0 with 5 minutes left in the first quarter over FAU. Poor Lane Kiffin might want to pack his bags and just take everyone home right now. But first, before we get into all of this and the college football talk, we're going to depress you and talk about the Tribe.
Let's bring it down a notch, as I like to say. Boy, the poor Tribe. They had such a good week in Detroit, and then last night happened. They lost 4-0 to the Rays. And these are big games, obviously, because the Rays are the team that they're being chased by right now in the wild card. You know, the bigger story, though, in the past week since we've last talked is Jose Ramirez. He's out for the year. I don't know why they're – I know teams are hesitant to always say that stuff, but he is. He's out for the year. Yeah. So Jose is out. Franmil Reyes has played better. And then the other news, which is good news, is Cookie Carrasco is coming back tomorrow on Sunday. So Sunday, September 1st, you will see Cookie Carrasco making an impact on his team. I think the bigger thing with the Tribe, though, Jared, is, yes, the Tampa Bay series is big. But we're all being honest and truthful. It's all about did they make it to October and expectations in October. That's kind of where I've gone at this point. I don't know where you're at, but that's kind of where I'm at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't expect them to win a division. No. I know I've flopped back and forth on this a lot. But there's no way they're going to be playing. They're not going to be catching up or gaining any ground at the moment because this series right now in Tampa Bay is already looking like a struggle. And the Twins already opened a can of whoop ass on the Tigers. And that's, you know, this is like the worst team in Major League history right now. Dealing with the Tigers. I don't know if that sounds like an exaggeration or hyperbole, but that really is an awful team. So it's going to be a struggle either way. The only way that I think the Indians are going to get in now, and I think we could safely say, is through the wild card.
Yep.
I don't know what my expectations are, though, Andy. Every time I think that they're down and out after a game like last night, they surprise you. I will give them that. They surprise you. The Franmil coming around and hitting the ball a lot better, that helps. And then we could also, the screams of you. Filling that void for Jose Ramirez. We'll see if that continues. If he can keep hitting the ball. We don't need him to hit as well as Jose, but halfway decent. And then we're also looking at, after last night, Naquin running into the wall and busting his knee up. They said a sprain initially. I haven't seen the follow up on all of that.
They're doing an MRI.
Yeah, which they need to. I mean, to come out and say a sprain right off the bat, I think they need to look a little closer, and obviously they're going to. Andy, at this point, I mean, they can do as I mean, I don't know. I don't know because look at me, I'm all over the place. Last night, and you know what it is? I think the way that last night went down was really frustrating. Bieber wasted another start. Bieber went out there and threw the hell out of, I mean, he was nasty, and he kept that fastball down. I mean, right at the bottom of the zone all night. That slider was just gross. I mean, he pulled the string on some of these dudes, and they just made them look silly. And then you come in, and he gets a little roughed up in the seventh, and you think, okay, well, that's all right. We'll see if they can hang on to this. And then Simber comes in and instantly gives up a 3-run shot. It was
gasoline on the fire. I mean, I think the bigger thing with the Indians that you're kind of alluding to, which I noticed in the Mets series, watching them in person, and I think they're playing better, but the Indians just look a little ragged. They look a little tired. They really do need a chance here to catch their second breath. They did not they had a lot of home games in July. I think that's a big reason why the Indians made the push that they did. and they're paying back for those home games because they have not been at home a lot. And they come back to home again. They don't get any relief with that. They play a 4-game set against Chicago, then they go right back on the road again. So really, the Tribe have had no break. I think this team is wearing down a little bit. I think they can get their breath. I do. The only thing that I alluded to you earlier, this is the first time for a Tribe team, Jared, I see, again, going to the point I guess I just made, I think the Indians are finally winding down towards, like, I don't know if I see the spark. I don't know if I'm seeing that jump. I think the one thing that I hold out hope for, because I think this team will rely on it and will thrive on it, is when Carrasco comes back tomorrow. I think that could give a lift mentally. I think that could give a spiritual lift. I think that the team will be excited to have him. And honestly, from a baseball perspective, the Indians need Carrasco's arm out of the bullpen. They need help right now.
That is huge. Huge out of the bullpen. Yes.
So I think Carrasco coming back could actually lift not just spiritually, but actually lift the team in a physical way, because they need someone to come out of the pen. The other thing for the Tribe, too, that really stands out is Jose. Mm-hmm. Jose did not have a good front half, but Jose is playing a lot better in second half. I like Yu. I think Yu's going to be a good player for the Indians. Yu Chang's good. I think he's going to be a solid infielder. He looks the part and plays the good fundamental baseball, and he's huge. He's a big dude.
Right.
But Jose not being there is being felt. And I by the way, it's not surprising. It's not what it isn't, whatever. And I think that the other thing I'm noticing, Jared, maybe Jose has more of a vibe on this team than maybe what we realize at times. Because I think him being injured has also hurt the team a little bit with a mental spark, a spiritual spark. And I'm trying not to do too much talk about that, but I think on this team... Yeah,
but it's real. It is real. It's a real thing. It is a real thing.
It is. I think the other thing, too, lastly, and you alluded to with Bieber. Bieber's pitching great. Clevenger's been pitching well. The only thing that I have not seen yet, and maybe they won't, but, the Cervallis, the Plesac's, these guys have never pitched games like this in September. And I'm interested to see if they can keep going to their heights. I mean, Cervalli's been, we talk about Plesac. That kid's pitching really well.
Well, here's the other thing. It'll be nice once we get into if the team gets into the postseason, dropping that rotation down and moving those guys into that bullpen as well to help out. Right.
And Plutko, by the way, too. I should mention Plutko's been pitching really well.
Those guys aren't gonna be needed to start in these playoff games.
No.
So, that will help as well.
Yes.
Because we are looking at relievers that have been roughed up, relievers that have not been holding their own. Whitgren did it the other night. Simber last night. It's just
Goody had a couple appearances here and there lately too.
No consistency. No consistency.
Yeah, which is typical bullpen. The Indians are I hate saying it. I guess I'm not going to jump off this team. The Indians look like a team that's built for next year. I love next year for the Indians. I think the Indians are going to be very good next year. But sadly for this year, these guys need starts in the playoffs to get some experience. These guys need to go through a run like this. The only other thing, too, I got, Jared, that we haven't really talked about, but I think it's now fair. Last night's another example. The Twins, they've kind of held their own. I think they split the season series. I think the Indians are one game above in that series right now. But the A's, they did not do well against the A's this year. The Rays, I think they're now 1-3 against the Rays right now. These are teams that you're going to have to compete in that one game. And Jared, the Indians have not played well against the A's or the Rays. This needs to start being talked about. This is one of your two opponents. And the A's thrashed the Indians this year.
They've played better against division leaders.
Yeah, the Red Sox, the Yankees, they've done better. They have not played well against the Rays and A's, and they're going to play one of these two teams. And I have to be honest, I don't think it's a great matchup from what I'm seeing this year.
My last two things when it comes to this team are this. You're right on the spiritual side, on that emotionally spiritual, that connected side. The Indians have not had a break. They have not had one fucking break. They have taken more hits to the chin. It's been difficult. So that alone is exhausting, right? Emotionally, they're waiting for the next shoe to drop. Now maybe they're not. Maybe they're reminding, but you can't hide that. It's just you can't. They've got to be exhausted. And then the other issue is what happened last night again. offensively, when the bats disappear, they are so hard to watch because you just have nothing but anguish for whoever that starting pitcher is.
Yep.
Because there's nothing that they can do. That pitcher, whoever it may be, whether it be Clev, whether it be Bieber, whether any of them, Plesac, I don't believe, or Savale hasn't had games where the offense has backed them up. I probably should double check that, but
right. Oh, by the way, that they talked about that in the last broadcast. You're right. They talked about that.
Well,
yes.
There you go. Then they've had these games where the offense, it's like, where are they? Where are they? You can't just disappear altogether.
Yeah, the Indians have had the Indians have been fragile all year from the get-go.
Yep.
Whether it's articles about Bauer, Lindor missing the first month, Kipnis being hurt initially too. You gotta remember that. It's just been
waiting on Zimmer, Salazar comes back and throws 30 miles an hour for his fastball.
Oh my God, that was we haven't talked about that. I
don't want to talk about it. Leave it alone. I forget I even said it.
Well, usually I'm the one getting fired up about it, but that was pretty sad.
Yes.
The Indians, though, a Jose Ramirez injury, yes, the Yankees can recover. The Astros could recover. I don't think the Indians are going to be able to recover to win big in October. Could they get in October without Jose? Absolutely, yes. Jared, do I see them being a heavy favorite? No, of course not. But Jared, we talked about this back in July. When the Indians are best, when they're sneaking under the radar good, I'm not getting that feeling anymore, even if they're going to be under the radar, but I don't know if they can make this big run that I once thought they might be able to do in July. I'm not feeling it, to be honest.
I don't think there's anything else to add at that point. The Indians are at a point right now where, if they can get in and then win their one or done game, then, just we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. I mean, there's nothing to do. I'm not going to get excited. I'm not going to get worked up. I'm not going to feel beat up about it. I will say this. When this conversation comes up, I don't like the negative side of this conversation. The whole, is the season a disappointment if the Indians don't make the postseason? All that talk, or is the season a disappointment if they don't win the one and done game if they get in? I don't think any of it's a disappointment. I think that this season was a wash from the beginning, and anything that they mustered up to do together was enough. The way that Tito pulled this team together throughout the season, the guys that they threw on the field at the beginning of the year, that was not a Major League Baseball team. No. It was not a Major League lineup.
Well, yeah, that's what we had.
And they fought their way through all the way to July. They got to the halfway point, to the All-Star game. We had talked about it, Andy. They brought themselves back within 6. Their record right now is, I believe, either as good, if not better, than it has been the last 3 seasons. They just haven't had a Twins team to contend with.
The Indians are playing above their head. They are. There's no way you could be disappointed with how this team has played.
I
don't feel disappointed.
You can't.
I agree. I don't feel disappointed. They've overachieved
with the amount of adversity and with the way that the season has gone. I've got no complaints. I just don't. No. I don't.
Here's a couple other good things, and I want to ask you a question, and we'll wrap up and go to football.
Yep.
Salazar is pitching down AA. We'll see what that means down the road. Dan Otero, who always seems like when he's close, he takes a step back, but he has been pitching again in Columbus. We'll see. Jordan Luplo's been out. I didn't realize that, but now I do. Jordan Luplo's been out. He's in Columbus. Will he be brought up soon? I would assume.
Yeah, I think
Zimmer's also in Columbus. I think we'll be seeing him soon. Mm-hmm. The one guy at all these names, though, is this last one. Yep. Jeffrey Rodriguez is pitching in Columbus right now. And, Jared, I think that's another guy who can help. I think Jeffrey and Carrasco actually bring real stuff to the bullpen that could really help this team and push them. So that is something to keep in mind. My last thing that I do want to talk about, because it was bantered about quite a bit in social media worlds, was the whole Royals situation where they sold their team in a minority order from the Indians bought it.
Lose that, all that stuff too.
It's a bigger story for Kansas City, so that's not one to tell that we'll live. But the interesting thing has been the backlash about the Dolans, again, complaining in all these articles about how poor they've been and how they're not making, I shouldn't say poor, but how they're not making enough, they're not making as much money as they think. And when the Royals sold for $1 billion, gotta be honest, Jared.
The Royals.
The sympathy stick is running low with the Dolans.
Considering the way that money is shared in Major League Baseball compared to the NFL, are you surprised that the Royals are considered $1 billion franchise? No.
I've been to Kansas City. It's a wonderful park. They fill they can fill the stadium if they have a competitive team. They also have a lot of attractions out there, and also
they've got that hotel with all the water slides inside the water park. I've been there.
Well, correct.
Right across the highway. It's right across the highway from the stadium.
Yes, it is, and they actually have like a shuttle that takes you back and forth.
Ooh, fancy.
I'll leave it on this. I just think the Dolans need to realize those articles. Yes, they've gone away, but boy, they get relived quickly in moments like that again.
Yeah, they sound out of touch. They sound like those,
really
when people bitch about politicians talking about, not being able to relate to the regular guy and gal. You're not going to get much empathy, Dolans.
No, and the whole reason, I'll call it the old stadium. The whole reason why Jacobs Field got started is because there was a tax levy that passed for cigarettes and alcohol. So the bigger thing that everybody needs to remember is the stadium is there, and yes, it's controlled and ran by the Indians, but that stadium is a public property. It is really put into by the dollars and cents by people coming to Cleveland. So needs to be reminded at times. The Dolan sympathy stick is low. That's how I want to end it. Is low.
I will say this though: the Dolan sympathy stick is low, but I'm not on the hate the Dolan bandwagon. I think that some folks get on too.
I'm not there either, but I understand, and I actually agree with some of the griping I'm seeing. I agree with it. Mm-hmm. When you see that number come out from Kansas City, you're like, Dolan, like that article looks sillier and sillier now every time you talk. So, anyways, let's talk about I love Cleveland teams. Cleveland teams are number one, but if there's a close number two, I love college football. So let's talk about college football. Right now, FAU is in a really heated battle. It's 28-0.
The Buckeyes have really pulled up over the last two possessions, to be honest with you.
Well, it's a heated battle because this guy talking right now took the 28.5. So we need to make sure that there's another field goal to be scored so we can cover.
I think we'll be all right, Andy.
I think it will be okay too. That's why it's a heated battle. In Vegas, this is an intense matchup right now. There's no room to give.
FAU has -5 yards of offense at the moment, and to Ohio State's like 230. So there you go.
We should lead off with the Buckeyes because they're the team that's up. And then for those of you who would like to, I will do a separate podcast on the death and burial of the Nevada-Purdue game later here in a second. But let's start with that. I'm still not over it. I don't do this. I went on a total Twitter banter rant. I just lost it last night after that game. Ohio State, everybody, look, there is no, and Nathan gets into it too with us, there is no secrets. This team's about Urban Meyer gone, Ryan Day in, and the new quarterback, Justin Fields, who's gotten a lot of hype so far. From what I can already tell, and from what I've seen in only a quarter and a half, the hype is real. He's very talented. He looks the part. He's fast. He's going to need to make some adjustments. And actually, since the 28 points, which is understandable in sports, he's actually slowed down a little bit. I can tell the Buckeyes are pulling off the brakes a little bit. The one thing, Jared, that's very evident that the Buckeyes have been blessed with, when you get quarterback to quarterback like this from Haskins to Fields, you are lucky. That is a lucky bridge for any team. And you know what? This guy is very good. He was very hyped coming into Georgia. And the hype is real from what I can tell. This team is very talented. The other impression I'm getting early from Ryan Day, now switching back to him, this guy is focused. This guy is not going to be the most animated. I don't think at times you're going to feel a lot of emotion. And Urban even gave you more emotion in the last couple of years. I think Ryan Day will. But now that I understand who he is and his background, Jared, this is an up-and-coming coach. And maybe, yes, I think people would love to have Urban there. This is even with Urban and whatever was going on, and he's needing to retire. Ryan Day was not going to be staying much longer at Ohio State if Urban was there, because Ryan Day is ready to coach. That was the impression I've gotten from all these articles.
Yeah.
From hearing what I've seen this week, Ryan Day is ready to take over a program like this.
Well, this is we know that the conversation prior to the season has been, the boosters. Nobody's going to put up with anything less than what we've been getting out of Ohio State, right? We weren't going to put up with, a down year. Right. Now, not granted, I don't count me in that. I just feel like that's, how it gets with these teams, with these new coaches, when you're at that tier, at that level, at the, when you're the Ohio State Buckeyes. What I will say, though, not only talking about Day, who has been texting back and forth with Urban throughout the day, because Urban can't help himself, I would say, more so than Day reaching out to him.
That's fair.
I could see Urban reaching out to Day and Day looking at his phone going, all right, enough. I got it.
Have you been to Nancy's on High Street? It's wonderful food.
but I will say this, looking at Fields, the way that Fields came to Ohio State, and I think you and I had this conversation. I didn't really like the look of it. I didn't like the look of him walking out onto the basketball court with Urban and with Dwayne Haskins prior to the transfer being announced. It just didn't. It felt like the wrong way to do this
smarmy.
stuff.
Business.
It felt smarmy. It felt business. The fact, he got the waiver to play this season, which, by the way, I think that any of that transfer non-waiver, I think that's bullshit anyways.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have no problem with playing right now. That's fine.
I just get frustrated because I know there's other guys that don't get the same treatment.
That's true.
But now looking at it, Ohio State really dodged a bullet with Tate Martell, I think.
Oh, well, I will actually double down.
Woo,
the week 0 game was Miami and Florida. And I'll tell you, the kid who played for Miami did a nice job. They almost won the game. But if Tate Martell was supposed to be Tate Martell, I think Miami wins that game. Because really, they had a youthful quarterback who made some freshman mistakes. And if you got an experienced quarterback who can play, that would have won that game. The only thing I can tell you from Tate Martell, and then we'll go back to the Buckeyes, Tate Martell came in there thinking he was going to get the job in Miami. Mm-hmm. And again, watching that game, I'm not saying he was bad. Like, the quarterback from Miami played well, but he was a freshman. He looked raw, which all freshmen do. Jared, they had Tate Martell playing to the level they thought they were going to get. Boy, I think Miami might win that game. So yeah, they did get a break there. Tate Martell is playing wide receiver. He's not even playing. I don't even think he's the backup quarterback for Miami. That's the impression I got when listening to the telecast. The interesting thing, I want to focus more on Day. I think the only thing that we all know, it's great to play FAU in the opener. It used to be Rice. Ohio State always seemed to play Rice every year. Yeah. So this is the FAU/Rice starter, and this is a great. And by the way, coaches like this need starts like this. It's great. It's good. It's smart.
Well, and that's exactly the difference that we're talking about here. Is this strong start compared to some of the slower starts to the first half of the opening weekend that Ohio State has had over the past years, whether it be with Tressel or with Urban Meyer. Those dragging ass first half starts where you're like, what are they doing? And then they'll come out the second half and score 38, 45 points, whatever it is.
Yep.
But still, it's annoying. This team came out and punched FAU in the mouth right off the bat. It makes sense that Day would want to have a statement like this with this first game, saying, "Don't forget who we are." Right?
Yeah.
Don't forget. We're Ohio State. Period.
Well, absolutely. And I'll go a step further in one aspect. The big thing that I've noticed in coaches like this, it is very easy, Jared, to get swallowed up into not on the field, but the off the field stuff. And the one thing I'll give Ryan Day or the program credit, they have kept that neutral, and that is hard at Ohio State. That is not an easy thing to do, but I have not heard any weird stories or, things coming out there that have been distractions. He's done a nice job of bottling that up. And I got to be honest, with Urban Meyer, there was always a weird story. There's always something going on in the background, and Ryan did a nice job. He had a clean offseason, and they needed that. Yep. The program needed that. Back to on-the-field stuff, I think the bigger story that's going to really come up this year as the season goes on, and it's the same, too, with Ryan Day, by the way. You play these bigger games, you're going to get tested better. I think the big story, which we're not going to learn today, is can J.K. Dobbins really take over this whole running game? Because that's been the big side story I've been reading in all these articles, is it sounds like with Weber gone, Dobbins is the guy, clearly. But they're also not getting a vibe that there's a second running back. They have running backs who can play. And
I think it's McCall. McCall's the backup right now, right?
McCall, but they're not in love with him. I'm not getting a lot of good vibe. The things I'm reading on The Athletic and other people, I'm getting that Crowley. They're really much higher on him, even though he's a freshman. And my point being is that Dobbins has never felt like a home run hitter. Okay. Dobbins is going to have to play like a home run hitter in a couple of these games in October and November. And it'll be interesting to see if he can do that, Jared. That's a new role for him. He is very confident. And by the way, as he should be. JK is very, here's a quote he had earlier in August. I want that responsibility of the team of relying on me in times of need. That's a good quote because he's right. There's going to be games as the season goes on, as you and I know, that Fields won't have it, weird weather, wet weather, and Dobbins is going to have to be the bell cow. That is a new role for him. He seems to be ready to take it. I think we should all note, let's see how he does with that role. I think that's going to play a big part of how Ohio State, if they go to the playoffs. And then the other big thing, Jared, that I've been reading so far is really the wondering on offense is who's going to be that star. You know, I know a lot of people like Campbell. I know you did last year too. Mm-hmm. Campbell's now in the pros. Who's going to be? Is it Olave? Is it KJ Hill? I saw KJ Hill run around earlier in this game today. Garrett Wilson's another name I've been hearing a lot about. Who is going to be that athletic star, Jared, outside of Fields that really catches the eye? Maybe it's Dobbins. I don't know. But who's going to be that guy who's going to be a wowing NFL hype player that's going to really take it to the next level for this team? I don't know if we know that yet. And by the way, that's okay. That's why you play the season out.
Well, no, and we didn't know it. We didn't even know it last season, to be honest with you, until halfway through the year that Paris Campbell really kind of stepped up, right? I mean, he was quiet through the first half of the season, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
I mean,
you're right.
It was a weird year, though, to come off of from last year with that Ohio State team.
Oh, they had
the worst defense I've ever seen. Yeah. And what I can say is Fields can sling it. Fields can throw. I mean, he throws. You know, you feel comfortable with him throwing the ball like you did Haskins. And when you look at him running, he's got better footwork. He can run the ball, too. So he's more athletic in that sense. So that helps Dobbins a little bit, too, depending on how they. I mean, that was the first touchdown of the game, was a rushing touchdown. Oh, and there. Yeah. Almost.
Close.
Okay.
Close.
And Ohio State almost busted another one.
50-yard line.
Yeah.
To finish up your thought, the other big thing that you alluded to, I think offense, you know, we'll see. The offensive line sounds like it's going to be better.
Yep.
Again, no real like, hey, this is an NFL draftee. Hey, there's someone who stands out. But it sounds like the offensive line is going to be better. Of course, as soon as I say that, I'm ahead of Jared. Justin Fields just took a sack.
Thanks.
So we'll see what happens. But the bigger story.
Oh, that's on him. He's got to get rid of that ball.
He's got to get rid of the balls, right. The bigger story for this season is what we all saw. They should have lost to Maryland. They got thrashed by Purdue.
Yeah.
And they had a couple of, and by the way, yes, they blew out Michigan, but Michigan did have some success running the ball against them. With this new defensive coordinator who comes up from Michigan, Madison, can he take this defense back to where it was? And Jared, that's going to be a big theme. You're not going to know today after FAU. But that's going to be a big story this year.
But you have seen, look, it's nice to see them get pressure on the quarterback. They've already had 2 or 3 sacks in this first, quarter and a half. I know that these guys that they're going up against are a lot smaller, but it looks like they're scheming better already. They're sharper than they were last year. They're not lethargic. Right. That's the other thing, is dealing with the lethargy that I'm used to seeing in these, again, in these games where we know that Ohio State's supposed to win. That seems to be gone. So, but time will tell. Time will tell if they want to keep it together. And this would be a great year to do it. I don't know. Clemson and Georgia. What are we looking at? Clemson's probably the toughest team right now to worry about. So, Alabama's coming off of that injury.
And Alabama's got some interesting things. I mean, that's a big injury. Losing that kid is a big injury. That linebacker was a top 15 pro talent. Paul Feinbaum said it catastrophic, and he does not throw words around like that. So that's how big of an injury was for the Tide. But going back to the Bucks, the player that everybody's been hyping, the player who actually played really well last year at times, but fought through injuries, is Chase Young. I think Chase Young's in for a big year, Jared. I did not realize how banged up he was last year, and he still made an impact on games. I think with him healthy, I think he's in for a huge year. I think the big thing that I'm noticing, though, and hearing and talking to you already, can Ohio State in October and November stiffen up and stop teams with the run? Because the Wisconsins, the Michigan States, the Penn States, that's what all those teams love to do, and they've had a trouble stopping those kind of teams. And Nebraska, too, for that matter. So time will tell. I think the one thing that I will take from Ohio State that I think will be a benefit to them. For whatever reason, Jared, I don't feel there's as much pressure as I have with the last couple of years of Urban, meaning expectations are still very high. I agree with you, but they're not elite level. Does that make sense? Meaning, I think some people would understand if Ryan Day goes, hey, you go to the Rose Bowl, you don't go to the playoff, you lose 2 games, but we're okay. You had a great year.
Yeah, but I also think that Ryan Day's
that.
the type of guy that's gonna act. They might have that chip on their shoulder too, Andy,
yes.
where they know that that's what people are thinking.
Yes, I will say this: that is no question. And I think Ryan Day, the one thing I'll give again, and then after this, I'm ready to throw to Nathan. I think Ryan Day, I did not realize how much he was wanting this role and how he's ready for it. If Urban Meyer does not have a retirement and does not get out of the game, I don't think Ryan Day was going to be here next year or the season after that. He was going to be gone. Yep. This guy's ready to coach.
Yep.
That guy's ready to coach. So with all that in mind, let's talk to Nathan Baird and talk about his opinions about the Buck.
Joining us, Nathan Baird, beat reporter for the Buckeyes. This is his first season doing this for Cleveland.com. Welcome to the show, Nathan Baird. Nathan, you covered Purdue before this. What brought you to Columbus?
Just a really good opportunity, a chance to work at a place like Cleveland.com. And people probably know, if they don't know Cleveland.com, they probably know the Plain Dealer, which is where that affiliation was prior to them sort of separating their digital and print, maybe a little bit more explicitly than some people do. But working with Doug Lamerise and the other people here at this that have been covering Ohio State for a long time, and to get to report on a program like this, Purdue obviously has its own history, maybe not as well known nationally, but Ohio State is a national brand in college football, and just a chance to do a new kind of storytelling and get inside a sort of an athletic behemoth like this and see how it works, as opposed to what we had at Purdue, which was kind of more of a small town feel. And just kind of, like I said, it's a new kind of storytelling, I feel like, and a new kind of storytelling challenge to step up and see the way that, the stakes are higher at this level, and the pressure is different at this level. And that usually means that the athletes and the coaches are different at this level. And I just wanted to find out what that was about.
Well, Nathan, I just want to say, as a longtime Purdue fan, I followed you, and the Buckeyes got a bye week. They don't have the Boilers this year, so they got a little lucky on their schedule. A little
Get the hell out of here.
I think Moore just scored again, another touchdown. All right, so getting to the Buckeyes, let me ask. The other guy who we know the hype, but from what you can tell, and I know you've only been there a week, but what is your vibe on Justin Field, the quarterback, so far?
Well, one of the things I wanted to find out with Fields was, because from the time that he committed, the sense was he was going to be the starter this year. That's why you saw some of the other attrition happen on the roster, some of the other changes that you saw, people leaving, people coming into the program. I think it was just a given that he was going to be the guy that ended up winning out at this job. Ryan Day went and got him for that purpose. He was very highly touted coming out of college, or out of high school, I should say. Had performed pretty well in the brief times that he played at Georgia. So he was a guy that I think they thought could come here. Not only could he play right away because of his talents, but someone who could, grow into the position over a couple of years and really build into something. But just because that was a given based on his athletic talents didn't necessarily mean he had the trust of his coaches and his teammates in other important ways. There's obviously a lot of leadership qualities that go into being a quarterback. They kind of have to be inherent. They kind of have to be just something that you sense from being around that person. It can't be something that they have to force. I don't think that really works in a locker room. And from talking to the players on the team, that was a story I wrote last week, one of the first ones when I got here. What did they see? How did he step up and prove to them that he could handle that kind of responsibility, or that he could fill that kind of role right away? And I think that's especially tough when you're coming in as a transfer. And it's not like you come in and you sit out a year and you get to do a bunch of things behind the scenes and show everybody your work ethic. And sometimes that can be even can punctuate things a little bit because intensify that a little bit because you're not getting rewarded with playing time. Your guy was coming in and just paying his dues. And even though you have to sit out a year, well, he's coming in and can play right away. So did he come in and did people get a sense of entitlement from him? Or did people see that he was willing to, make sacrifices and that he was willing to speak up and to, tell people when they were out of line, tell people that they're doing something wrong and get them going in the right direction. I mean, those are the things that a quarterback has to do. I mean, especially if you're a quarterback of a team that is thinking about, competing for national championships and things, you have to have a leader like that in the middle of your program. And it's too early to say for sure that's going to happen, but that was the vibe that I was getting from talking to people last week, that he was exhibiting kind of those characteristics, those kind of things that a quarterback, a leader should have. And that he had, that was the vibe that they were getting from him, that he was someone that they could trust and someone that they could lead. And that, I think, is going to be as important to what this team ultimately does this year as his feet and his arm.
Well, you talk about that and what they were finding out leadership wise, which is good to hear considering he didn't come in here without a lot of controversy, whether it was be for, taking the slot from somebody else or for comments that he was being investigated for while he was at Georgia that were apparently possibly racist. I haven't done a lot of digging into all of that, to be completely fair. But it's not like he just walked into this position and it was handed to him, which is surprising considering the way that we first saw him, which was walking out on the court during Ohio State basketball game with Coach Meyer at that point.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think, Ryan Day didn't name him as the starter until Monday. And like I said, even though it was kind of a foregone conclusion at that point, again, I think it was sort of to prove a point a little bit that, everybody on that team already knew. They know who's taking all the reps with the ones or taking the majority of the reps with the first unit. They can figure those things out. They can read between the lines. But I think it was just important to, again, give that sense that here's a guy who's going to come in, and if you come in and you feel like you're entitled to something, you feel like something's just going to be given to you, and that's how you carry yourself, that I think is going to have a negative ripple effect down through the rest of this roster. Even if it's true, even if you are just being handed something, even if you are entitled to it by your skill that is a level above the other guys who are competing at that job. But if you come in and don't act that way, and if the coach doesn't act that way, if I know sometimes it seems phony to us from the outside, but I think if they're going through those motions, and I mean that in almost a positive way, if you're treating it like it's just any other position, I think that does help set a vibe, especially at a crucial time where there is just, again, guy who's taking over the head coach the first time. You got several assistants coming in at important positions. It's a time where this team kind of has to build its identity, build its cohesiveness, and kind of just build and gel still within the team in some ways, because there is a lot of uncertainty. Anytime these coaching changes happen on a roster as skilled and as deep as Ohio State, you can never, I don't think, take for granted that you're going to have your job next year, because they're always bringing in somebody who is a 5-star, 4-star, one of the best recruits in the nation, is coming into your position every single year. And I think it's important that they kind of establish that, nobody's special kind of attitude and followed up on it. And at least that's what they've said has happened. That's what we're hearing has happened. So if so, I think that could have positive ramifications for them this year.
Yeah, we won a national championship one year with 3 different quarterbacks, for crying out loud. So yeah, they get guys who can sling the ball or who can run the ball, know, in the pocket. Go ahead, Andy.
No, just a little bit. Let me ask. You kind of alluded to it, Nathan. What has been the vibe of Ryan Day so far, and what's been the vibe of this team? You kind of alluded to a little bit, but I know you've only been there a week, but there's always born in Cleveland and all that, but I did my latter years in Columbus, and you could always feel the pressure with Cooper in the 90s as the season would get closer. I have to be honest. I'm not sure. I feel it, but I'm not sure if I'm feeling it as intense as I would for a Cooper or a Tressel or for a Meyer, or even maybe that one year of Fickle. Are you feeling like, hey, yeah, you got a new coach, but the expectations are big things. Like, we got to win a Big Ten championship and go to the playoffs. Are you feeling that kind of pressure in the camp so far?
Right. So, yeah, like I said, I've only been here a week, and last Monday was my first day, and that's the only time I've been at a press conference with Ryan Day, and I haven't seen this team practice. So
right.
there are some ways where I can only give you a partial answer to that. I will say that I don't know that with someone like Urban Meyer, there is a presence there.
Right.
It's a guy who had already won 2 national championships by the time he got to Ohio State.
Yeah.
A guy who got here and had an undefeated season his first season, even though they were ineligible from doing anything with that. I mean, there was just a presence around Urban Meyer from what I saw from the outside and from talking to people around here. I don't know that it's fair to say that that's happening yet with Ryan Day, but I don't think one should expect that necessarily to happen yet with someone like Ryan Day. I will say, speaking to the other half of that, though, from talking to players at several different position groups last week, over 3 days of interviews, everybody talks about, we don't just want to be a good defense. We want to be the best linebacking unit in the Big Ten. We think we're the best receiving group in the Big Ten. We think we could be the best secondary in the Big Ten, or maybe even higher than that on some of those position groups. That's the level that they aspire to here. And it's a realistic thing. I think, coming from a place like I did at Purdue, I don't think you saw that from position group to position group every year,
right,
where they could realistically say, we may have the best collection of talent in the Big Ten, if not the country, at certain positions. And Ohio State's always going to be in that conversation. So that I don't think has changed. I mean, you've got coaches here, whether it's Kevin Wilson, whether it's Greg Madison coming down from Michigan, whether it's Larry Johnson, guys who have been in the Big Ten or around college football for a long, long time, and they have set that standard of excellence within their position groups or for an entire program for a long time at this university, at different universities. So that's really helping, I think, Ryan Day get a good step
point
here, is just having the kind of staff that he has. If each individual position group is going off and setting those kinds of expectations, worrying about themselves, aspiring to that kind of level, that's, I think, how a championship team kind of gets made, is that each group worries about itself, figures that out, attacks that on its own, and then it comes together as a group. Maybe that's where the head coach, kind of coordinates things or orchestrates things and brings it all together. So I think, as far as just whether again, from my conversations last week, there hasn't been any drop off in just the individual expectations of the coaches and players in the program. Now it's just a matter of what happens execution wise on every Saturday from here through December.
Let me ask you, you kind of teed them up. The big conversation for people who watch game in and game out was the defense. The defense definitely, whether it's Purdue, whether it's Maryland, they had days where they just got gashed pretty hard. And Madison coming down from Michigan is an interesting hire. And again, I know you've only been there a week, but you kind of alluded to it. Is there been an emphasis, or have you heard a little chatter like, hey, we knew we struggled with the run. We knew we struggled on defense, and we're putting an emphasis. And I know, again, it's only been a week, but Madison, your early impressions, and what do you think of the defense talking to those different position groups?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens defensively, because you're right. They've been pretty upfront about what happened defensively last year, that it was a shortcoming. I mean, I think I remember looking, they allowed more yards per game than they had allowed more than 50 years last year.
Don't remind me. You don't have to say it all again. I was ripping my hair out weekly.
The points per game were the most in like 21 years. I mean, it was a step back defensively for that program. You can't argue that it wasn't. Eager to see what happens at the top from a defensive standpoint. And I think that's something that a lot of people in the media before I got here were already looking at. Was they do bring Greg Madison in from Michigan, a guy who's been up there for a long time. And you've also got Jeff Hafley, who's been a long-time NFL assistant coach. They're technically the co-defensive coordinators, although We think maybe Madison is the one that's like got 51% of that share. So that's, I don't know how that's going to work out. I mean, I don't know how that's going to work out. It's honestly, it may be nothing because it's becoming more and more common throughout college sports.
Right.
I mean, Purdue,
That's fair.
go look at their coaching staff ever since Jeff Brom got there. And I don't want to keep bringing up Purdue all night, although you
can bring up Purdue as much as you want, Nathan.
But,
you bring it up as much as you want, buddy.
That's who I have direct experience with. And since Jeff Brom came in, he had, multiple, I think, co-offensive coordinators or co-coordinators of certain parts of the offense. And so they've spread things around. A lot of coaching staffs are doing that these days. So it may be a cosmetic thing, but we'll see if there becomes some kind of a conflict there if things don't get better defensively. I will say, they've got, arguably, if not the best, one of the best defensive ends in the country in Chase Young. They have a defensive tackle rotation that they think goes 6 deep with really solid guys. They bring back pretty much the whole linebacking core from last year. We don't know exactly how that's going to rotate yet. And the other thing that's an interesting wrinkle there is Madison brought in what used to be the Viper at Michigan, the hybrid safety linebacker position. Now it's going to be the Bullet at Ohio State. So that takes one of those linebackers off the field because that's typically more of a defensive back position. And you've got a really, I think, deep roster of cornerbacks and safeties. So the talent is there. The personnel seems there to take a step forward defensively. They almost have to take a step forward defensively. But I think they could be one of the better defenses in the Big Ten just based on the talent that they have in that locker room. Now it's a matter of, again, they just brought in a new look. There's a new look here, a new scheme. How does it all come together? They've changed some things as far as how they're kind of disguising some looks on defense and making it supposedly kind of easier on themselves, but also potentially harder on opposing offenses to kind of surmise what they're doing out there. So again, some of those things that we won't start figuring out for sure until they start playing on Saturday.
All right. We'll do a quick thing. You and I talked about it off, and then we'll talk about it on. The old schedule game. If you look at Ohio State, you don't have a TCU, which, normal years TCU was up. They were down last year. There's no Oklahomas. There's no Va-Techs. I mean, Cincinnati, Florida Atlantic, Miami, Ohio, yawn, for being honest, even with Cincinnati with Fink. So let me ask you this, Nathan. What do you see as you lay out the whole schedule? And I know you're not predicting, but what hurdles could you possibly see? Is it, if you read it and you take it at first glance, Nebraska on the road, a Friday night against Northwestern, tricky, I guess, but what do you maybe foresee might be some challenges that to a schedule, aside from the annual one this year, especially you got Penn State, Michigan back-to-back. Outside of that, where do you might see some trips and some hurdles for the Bucks?
Yeah, so it is an interesting schedule relative to what their usual schedules look at because they have tended to put, there'll be like one marquee non-conference game and then kind of one mid-level one and then one lower-level one. You saw that with even some of the additions that they had last week. None of those were those kind of marquee games, but Arkansas State, San Jose State, Western Kentucky, those kind of filled in some of those other slots on their future schedules. And in coming years, they play, Oregon, home and away, Notre Dame, those kind of games that, upper echelon games. They don't have one of those this year. Although I think the Cincinnati game is a little bit sneaky.
Not easy.
Potentially. There's just a lot.
Not easy.
You've got an in-state rivalry. You got Luke Fickell coming back here. Cincinnati, on top of all that, is just a really solid football team. So that doesn't seem like a cakewalk to me. But yeah, within the Big Ten play, I think there's also, nobody, I think, looked at last year's schedule before the year and thought, boy, you better watch out. Purdue might be able to just boat race you. Or, 2 years ago, boy, you better watch out for that game at Iowa because they might just clobber you. Those are unexpected results for any number of reasons. So I think they're going to have a tough game, I think, at Nebraska. I never think you can take for granted playing at Northwestern. I think it's one of the more underrated programs in college football.
I just mouthed that to Andy. Yeah, that's exactly.
I agree.
Yeah, they just every year they're just really solid. Kind of in the same way somebody like Iowa is. It just seems like every year they're in that 8-win conversation. And in a place like Columbus, maybe that gets taken for granted a little bit. But I can tell you, around the country, most other programs are dying to just annually be in that 8-9 win conversation. And those are the kind of programs that just seem to live in that neighborhood a lot. And I don't take that for granted. In both of those cases, they play at Nebraska and then they have to come home and play Michigan State. They play at Northwestern, they have to come home and play Wisconsin. In both of those cases, if something goes wrong on the road, then you have to come home and play arguably an even better team, or at least as good of a team at home. And the one thing that never happened under Urban Meyer is they never lost back-to-back regular season games. I mean, and that's kind of, I know that teams, again, that live at this level of college football, I know that's sort of expected. It's still really hard to do. But you never, think back the whole time he was here, nobody looks back and says, oh, remember that time they had that really tough October and they lost 3 games by, a field goal or less, and it was just a really rough grind. Like, they never had that. They always found a way to bounce back from a loss and win the next game. Sometimes the schedule helps you out. This year, I think it could work the other way, because if you stub your toe on one of those road games and then something goes wrong at home and all of a sudden you've lost 2 games in a row, that's where you do have to kind of manage a lot of noise, a lot of panic. As much as they try to shut it out, it's still right here in your lap. It's a lot of people are going to be concerned. So that's one thing I want to see how Ryan Day responds to the first time, or his whole coaching staff. But again, he's at the top of the list. How do they respond when something doesn't go right? When something bad happens? When they lose a game that people think they shouldn't? When they lose a game because of something that they did wrong? How do you respond the next week? How do you get a team refocused, get them to put that game behind them and come back the next week? That's it. And to replicate the level that Urban Meyer was able to do that, and Urban Meyer's staff was able to do that, even though there are a lot of holdovers, is asking a lot, because they did it at a rate that is kind of unsustainable. So we'll see. I think either of those games on the road, I think, are potentially tough for the reasons I already stated. And then obviously the 2 games to end the year, playing at home against Penn State and at Michigan. There's reasons why I think Ohio State could be 12-0 and win that game at Michigan. There's reasons why I could think they could be more like 8-4. And that sounds like just a huge shift, and in some ways it is, but we've all watched sports enough to know that sometimes the margin isn't that wide when you're talking about even that many losses.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that next. I'm going to wrap this up for you, Nathan, and just 2 quick questions. You refer to the team up north, of course, with their big expectations coming in this year, coming off their revenge tour of last year, which did not work out so well for them. Do they have a theme and a T-shirt that they're parading around this year? Should the Buckeyes be extra worried about what's going to happen? Do we have an angrier Harbaugh that we're dealing with who doesn't respect mental health? I'm throwing it all out there right now, Nathan. I think the way that I'm looking at it is that team up north, boy, there's a lot of expectations every year, but I just don't want to hear it until they actually win. What do you say to that?
Oh, I think that's fair. I had the chuckle the other day when Urban Meyer was doing one of his new studio jobs, and one of the other people on the panel asked him, "Is this the year for Michigan?" And he said, "For what?" Like I don't think he meant it as like a dig. I don't know if he meant it as a dig. That would be
that's pretty good.
That would take a lot of hubris to say it that way. I think he just meant, it's not. Michigan won 10 games last year. They routinely win about that number. And again, I know that in these parts, it's whether you win or lose that game around Thanksgiving that kind of colors your season. So I think that what's going on with Michigan, though, is people see an Ohio State team that, for some of the reasons we already stated, is maybe a little bit vulnerable this year. They see nobody else necessarily in the East that is at that same level. I think they see Michigan and Ohio State still as the 2 best teams, maybe the 2 most complete teams in the East right now. And you look at Michigan with you've got Shea Patterson, you've got a pretty experienced offense overall. I think the whole offensive line might be intact, which is sort of an underrated thing sometimes in football. The offensive line cohesiveness and guys that play together for a while and how the bond that they kind of build, I think sometimes can make a difference. And say what you will about Jim Harbaugh, I think he's a really good football coach. So, and they get to play Ohio State at home. I just think there's a lot of things kind of lining up for. People look at it and say, hey, maybe this is their year to finally sneak through and win that game. we'll see. I think this is probably in the case of both these teams, though. You look at, the schedules they have to play, some of the other teams they have to play. I don't think any of them can take anything for granted that they're going to be, playing for an undefeated season in that last week. I think you've got to win those first 11 to make that 12th one worth something in the larger scheme. I know it's always worth something in Ann Arbor and Columbus, but when you start talking about the national implications, those other games we were talking about on Ohio State's schedule matter just as much as that Michigan game does.
In 5 words or less, I'm being kind of flexible on this. Last question. In 5 words or less, I don't know. I felt like 3 was too few. And I feel like Nathan might want to elaborate a little bit more. I'm giving him 5. 5 words or less. How should Ohio State Buckeye fans go into this season with their expectations? What should their expectations be?
Realistic, but cautiously optimistic.
Nice.
Yep. Perfect.
Nice.
I love that.
Nice. Nathan, you come on here anytime, buddy. You talk about Purdue sports anytime you want, all right? We need more of that Purdue push.
You got my number. Give me a call anytime.
Well, dude,
we will. We're adding you to the list. Between you and Hayden Grove, we've got to. We'll have to grab a few more of you.
Nathan, thanks so much for joining us. We'll join you mid-year to see how things are doing, and enjoy Columbus. It's a good town.
Go Buckeyes.
Will do. Thanks a lot.
Thank you to Nathan. He's new to this. He is a longtime Purdue beat reporter. Now he's on the beat for the Buckeyes. I guess I should allude to that real quick with Purdue in a second. But the last thing I want to go to that Nathan talked about in the interview, Jared, the one thing that I think the Buckeyes got a little bit of a break on is their schedule. And I know that they have some tricky games starting from Lincoln on the 28th. They have the Huskers in Lincoln, Michigan State at home. They go on the road to Evanston on a Friday night, Wisconsin at home, and Maryland. Maryland's always been a kind of again, last year it reminds me, they're a little bit of a thorn. And then Rutgers, that's a bye week. They're terrible. And then you got Penn State in Michigan back-to-back. But they don't have that Oklahoma. They don't have USC, even TCU. I know Cincinnati's got Fickle, and that does bring in something. But if we're all being truthful, I don't think Ohio State's going to lose to Cincinnati. So, I mean, that they have a good, soft schedule at the top that's going to help them. But as the season goes on, we'll have to see if they can get through these Nebraska road trips. Can they play? And by the way, back-to-back weeks with Penn State and Michigan is going to be tough. It's
going to come down to that start of the game lethargy that they have been prone to.
Yeah.
Can they come out and punch people in the mouth?
As they did today against FAU. As they did today against FAU. Before we move on to the other two clubs, is there anything for Ohio State that you see as a fan that's like, I am still questioning, even after watching a half here for the Bucks? Is there something that sticks out? Or after even watching one half now, you're like, all right, it is business as usual. I know there's a new coach and a new quarterback, but I can tell the Buckeyes are going to be geared and ready to go.
Rhythm. They're going to need to get some rhythm. Those quick scores don't help with getting rhythm. These last 4 possessions, they haven't gotten any rhythm.
Yes.
And it really comes back to Fields. Fields took a bad sack. I think it's really comes down to rhythm. So they've got to get comfortable with each other. That's all it is.
We'll be talking Buckeyes.
That's what I'm worried about. Other than that, nothing else. No, I think they've got the athletes that they need, and I think that they're ranked exactly where they should be right now.
All right, appropriately. We'll do the Irish last. Let's talk about Michigan. Michigan's another team that had a big new addition. They got this guy Josh Gaddis. He's been a talk. It's funny when I was watching all the pregame shows, and obviously for people who don't know, I love College Game Day. Yes, I worked for ESPN for 16 years, but I love College Game Day. It's one of the best, well-run shows. Lee Fitting is excellent. He's a good dude, and that show is a well-oiled machine. I know Lee, and that show's just love that show. It's one of the best-run shows to watch in sports. And they talked a lot about Josh Gaddis today, and it should be talked about. The big thing for Michigan in these last few years is and by the way, he's a Schembechler guy, so you can understand it. We're going to do the I formation. We're going to pound the ball. And by the way, Michigan did. Boy, did he follow that script, but didn't bring big wins over big teams. Gaddis is going to bring a new formation that everybody runs. More spread, more option, hurry up tempo. I think the big question, we just alluded to it on defense with the Buckeyes, will they be able to stop the run? I think for Michigan, I think this sounds great on paper, but is Harbaugh really going to run the spread?
Well, that's what I mean. And are they really going to execute? Are they really going to be able to execute that style offense?
Well, Shea Patterson thrives in that offense. And Shea last year won a bunch of games as a drop back. So I think I'm not worried. Okay, I'm not worried about Michigan's offense. The only thing about Michigan, similar to the Buckeyes, is they have a running back. And I wouldn't say issue, but it's kind of like, I don't know. They lost their starting running back. He's out for the academic reasons, Chris Evans. So the big question's been who's going to be the bell cow. And from what I'm reading, Jared, Michigan may not have one. With losing Chris Evans for the year, it's really put them back in a question mark. You're hearing a lot about Christian Turner, the Athletic is recommending him to be the guy. There's this guy, Jack, I won't pronounce his last name correctly, Charbonnet, Sharbonnet. I apologize, Zach. I'm sure he's listening. But Zach, is another true freshman that they're high on. But Michigan, to where you're going to with Gaddis, and we just talked about with Dobbins, I think in bigger games, this is going to be interesting for Michigan. Who is going to get those big runs? Because we all know Harbaugh's going to run the ball late to win the game. And when you don't have hey, this is our guy. This is our dude. It makes me wonder, who's going to get the ball in big spots?
It's going to take.
It's interesting.
It's going to take a few weeks. It's going to take a few weeks for some of this stuff to hash out.
I am fast. I've said this all the time. I am fascinated by Michigan. Fascinated. I know you can't. I know you can't call Michigan, but Michigan's fascinating.
I think that I don't. Oh boy, I think they're in that realm of hype and being overrated at this point. I'm not saying that just because it's that team up north. But again, let's go right back to this. They have fallen on their faces. They have fallen on their faces in every opportunity and every situation that they've been in.
Yes.
To prove everyone wrong. They've fallen on their faces.
Yes.
I don't see that changing now. And I really, really, really don't think, because I do mix these things in my mind with, the game of football and the mentality of those Harbaugh, I don't know how good of a place I could say he's in right now.
I think there is I will get to it, but I want to go through the rest of this Michigan team. I think it's very odd to me how many people are putting Michigan in the playoff. And I was like, what have you seen to say that they can do this? You know
how this happens, Andy. It snowballs. Somebody gets a big idea and then everyone rolls with it. There's no reason. There's no reason
I'm not
to
seeing
feel
it.
that way.
I've told you this. I'm not seeing it. They have some good wide receivers. But I'll tell you, let's get to it. By the way, if everybody who hasn't, obviously there's probably a lot of listeners who don't, Michigan's strength is going to be the offensive line. Their offensive line is outstanding. And supposedly, even after their starters, Jared, they have great depth. So Michigan will have a fantastic offensive line. So they won't be touching Patterson when it comes to problems with protection. But the biggest thing
that could help their running game. Even
by the way, their offensive line is going to save them games. And I think this one scout said it best. This is from Athlon. If you don't have athleticism, they're going to wear you out. And I agree with that with Michigan. If they play, they don't play Purdue this year, but Purdue, they'd wear them out. They'd play certain teams. I'd be like, they're just going to wear them down. They just have too many big boys. They're going to be able to crush you. Can they beat Ohio State in a big spot? Nope. I don't think so. Nope. Can they beat Penn State? I don't think so. Mm. I don't know if they're going to. Honestly, the more and more I read about Michigan, and I got to see them play today. I'm interested to see how they do against the Irish, even though that game's in Ann Arbor. The bigger question I have for Michigan, do I think Gaddis is going to bring some excitement? Do I think Michigan's going to score more points? Yes. Do I think they'll be able to move the ball and again push around teams they're better than? Yes. But Jared, they have had a total cleaning out in defense. Their defensive coordinator is now coaching at Ohio State, and they lost Devin Bush, Rashawn Gary, Chase Winovich. And Chase Winovich was a good player. Are they really going to be I want to, all the things I've been reading about Michigan, like this guy, can't wait, want to see more. It's okay, they're prospects, but who was going to be the guy who's the Devin Bush, the Winovich, who you always saw making big tackles on big plays, right?
Yep.
Right? I guess what I'm getting to is I don't buy this fucking bullshit about Michigan. I don't buy it. And I'm not an Ohio State guy. I don't buy it. I'm not buying it. I don't know if I'm seeing it. Do I think
Revenge
Michigan
Tour 2.0? Print the T-shirts now. Print the T-shirts now. Print them.
Press your khakis, right? I mean, anyways, look.
You got a bunk bed? Coach will sleep in it.
Here's the last thing about Michigan.
I'm not nice. I'm sorry. I'm not nice about it. I'm not.
By the way, Middle Tennessee State, the Raiders. And by the way, that is not an easy game. The Middle Tennessee State's always sneaky good. So it's not FAU. Is my point. This is not FAU. They're not gonna win the game, but they're gonna push them around a little bit. I am interested to see as this season goes on. They play at Wisconsin early. They have a weird Notre Dame game in the late October 26th. And then after that, they go Michigan, Indiana, Ohio State, and Maryland. Jared, they play Penn State, Notre Dame. That was my point. They play Penn State, Notre Dame back to back. Not easy. Is Michigan really going to get through this and win the whole thing? Because a lot of people have been hinting at that, and I'm not seeing it. I am not seeing it. I think they lose 2 or 3 games.
Oh, goodness.
Boy,
I will say this. Watch what happens early at Wisconsin.
That's a tricky game. They have a bye week. And by the way, don't sleep on the Army Black Knights.
I was thinking that too. I didn't want to say it, but
there's been people who think they should be ranked. That's how high people are. I'm not there. I want to see Army play, but Army has really improved their program. That is a game. It's like Navy. Don't sleep on Navy. Yeah. It used to be 2 or 3 years ago. Don't sleep on Army.
That was Ohio State against Navy in that first. That was one of those opening games. I was at that game. It was here in Baltimore. It was at M&T Ratbird Stadium.
Yes, and by the way, as a longtime Irish fan, that coach in Navy's good. And supposedly Army's. And by the way, I saw Army play. They are much better. They should have beaten Oklahoma last year. Should have been. They should have beaten them. They had them on the ropes. So, anyways, that's the report on Michigan. I think the big thing here, though, outside of the games, this whole Harbaugh mental health, we've talked about it, so I don't want to banter too much about it, but I'm going to simply state this one more time. I do not agree with Harbaugh's stance about mental health. If a player needs help and he has been diagnosed and he can go somewhere to get help, this is a college player. He's a college athlete. This is not professional. If you're talking professional, I would understand. You got to make a trade for goods. Fine. This is not that. You should allow the player to transfer, and it's fucking ridiculous, and it's bad, and he's an asshole for saying some of these things he's been saying. He's basically questioning mental health on kids who are not adults yet. They're growing into adulthood. It's ridiculous, and I don't fucking like it. It's awful.
As a mental health psychology guy studying GAT stuff, it's an awful way to say that, by the way. I would hope that you think the University of that team up north school, their psych department would write a strongly worded letter to Coach Harbaugh and maybe educate him on why he's wrong.
Yes.
That would be a good idea. idea. The psych department. The psych department. Now, I don't know much about that team up north school's psych department. I don't know a lot about it. But I would assume that folks in that department probably cringed at those statements.
Not nice. It's not nice. We'll see how the season plays out. We'll be following Michigan. You and I are neither fan, but you have to talk about them. Really quickly, is I did pick some lines. Our blog is having a bit of a time posting them, but I posted them on Facebook. I feel good about Ohio State. Boise State not showing up. I just don't like how that whole Florida State program is going. They're down early in Tallahassee. And then the other game, too, to watch out for later tonight. I do like Auburn. I've been a big fan of Malzahn. I think they're a much better team than Oregon. I think they're going to handle them nicely in Fort Worth. There's really not a big amount of big week 1 games. And then you get, like last year, we had so many sexy games early, Jared. Washington, Auburn. You had an Alabama. I forget who Alabama played early on last year, but he had a big game there. Just not the same vibe this year. And then you get to my Irish. They finally get to tee it up on Monday night. They play against the Cardinals. This is not your Bobby Petrino Cardinals. They are not as good right now. If people can look up who Bobby Petrino is and get that joke somewhere, why we're laughing.
No.
Look, here's the simple thing. about the Irish to me. And I've been reading a lot about them. The one thing that does worry me about the Irish is they've had a little bit of nicks and bruises already. Two of their better players are not going to be playing early on. I think that I don't like that vibe, as we've learned from the Indians. You don't like going into a season with already injuries, especially in football.
Right.
And the Irish are a little banged up a little bit. The biggest thing to me, Jared, I don't care about, we'll run through some of these things. I'll tell you things I'd be watching for as an Irish fan. To me, I hate saying this, but it's so true here. It's all about Ian Book. Ian Book, before the injury, was wonderful. He was looking like the real deal. Looked like a player who might be able to elevate the team to maybe win a playoff game or two. When he came back from injury, it's my biggest fear in college sports. I think it's harder for college athletes to come back from injury compared to pros.
Oh, this is a different look here, Andy. I'm going to ask you: is it Ian or Ian?
I think it's Ian.
I think it's Ian. I think it's Ian Eagle.
Okay.
But I think it's Ian Book.
Okay, Ian Book. All right.
I have to double check because my brother is Ian, I-A-N. It's the Scottish derivative of John, by the way.
Oh.
That's what that name is.
Jared Watson for your Irish knowledge.
Ian Book, but that's the problem is Ian Eagle spells it that way.
I know.
We all know Ian Eagle.
Well, how about this? Book.
Badass. I'm going to high five him one day sometime.
I'll call it by his last name, Book. Book needs to play like he did before his injury in Northwestern. He needs to play like he did in those early games. Even in the Syracuse win, he didn't look good. I talked about that last year. USC, he struggled, and then he did not play well against Clemson. No one did for the Irish.
Well, a year will make a lot of difference. A year could make a lot of difference. Could make a lot of difference. I don't have much on Notre Dame, to be completely honest with you. I don't mean to say, Andy, they've consistently been ranked and not lived up to the hype either. You want them to. You want them to. You want them to because they are Notre Dame.
Ready for this? And this is for all my Irish fans out there who listen. The Irish lost to Clemson 27 points. Alabama lost to them by 28. The Irish were 1 point better in the matchup. And I bring that up, and I am being sarcastic, but I bring it up for a purpose. Maybe Clemson was really that good. And by the way, I watched the Georgia Tech game. I taped the Browns games I wanted to watch. And by the way, it's for a whole myriad of reasons. I couldn't watch the Browns game because I was traveling for work. My work life's been hell lately. So I'm behind on everything with the Browns, but I'm going to catch up this weekend.
By the way, I can confirm. Andy's work life has been
hell.
Has been a pile of dog
hell.
shit.
Hell. I took it out on a bottle of wine, some beer bottles last night.
Congratulations, though. Good for you. You earned it. It was deserved.
Well, it was baptism by fires. I wasn't planning on it. The next thing I know, I was like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm going to have a couple more. So here's the whole thing about Book. It's a big thing on his shoulders. But I think looking at how the Irish really went through last year, yes, their schedule this year is a lot more daunting, which we'll get to. But the Irish do have the parts. I like Tony Jones. I think he's going to be a very good running back. There's a lot of people very high on Jafar Armstrong.
Yep. Very
high on Jafar Armstrong. I think he's going to be a wonderful player for him. And there's Chase Claypool. He's a star, big player. The Irish have good defensive players. Their defensive ends are studs. There's a scout who said on Athlon, they have players that are freaks. They can really disrupt. The Irish have the parts, Jared. I like Ian Book. I don't know, Ian or Ian. I don't know. Book.
No,
you got me out. Yeah, right. But they're wide receivers. They have some good talent. I like Armstrong. I like Jones. I would even argue I think those two running backs are better than what the Buckeyes have and what the Wolverines have. Okay, so you got some good parts. Mm-hmm. But, Jared, as I've learned about the Irish, this has happened in the most recent years, these are the teams where it's like, gosh, I really like this team to make a big run, and then you go to their schedule. And their schedule is very daunting. Yes, they start off the year against Louisville, but again, this is not the same Louisville team than past years. But, Jared, have to go to Georgia in September, to Michigan in late October, and then finish the year at Stanford. Those are tough games. And I've looked at all the other schedules. No one has a schedule like this.
Boy, I'll tell you what, though. If they can pull that upset against the Bulldogs,
everything accelerates.
That changes
everything. Everything accelerates.
That changes everything.
Jared, I gotta be honest with you. I think that is one of the biggest games for Brian Kelly. He does not have to win that game, but he can't get embarrassed.
Exactly.
He cannot get embarrassed.
Exactly.
That is the big thing with the Irish. They have played in these games, and they not just have lost. They have, lost with like Roman candles in the mouth coming out the chute. I mean, it's been bad. The Irish cannot handle another Miami meltdown at night. And by the way, the Georgia game is going to be on CBS primetime, 8 o'clock on the 21st. It's going to be a cool setting. Really, really, really cool setting. So the Irish have an opportunity to provide and perform. Here's what I'd say about the Irish. Again, Claypool, you remember his name. I think they have two good running backs in Armstrong and Jones. Both are good. They have studs on defensive end, and we all know Book. The parts are there. Can the Irish stay healthy enough? And are the Irish going to be able to get through this schedule? I don't know. I think they win 9 or 10 games, but I don't know if I can say 11 or 12.
At least, you know what? I mean, that is, oh boy. For Notre Dame not being in a conference and having a schedule like that, where they end up playing Georgia, that team up north, Stanford to end the season. It's hard to determine how good they're really going to be. I mean, because if they lose by a few points against Georgia, how much do they really drop? How much do they really drop?
But to your point, Jared, this is one of the few teams that can afford a loss because of the schedule. I think that's what I was trying to get at. Yeah, they can afford a loss because they can get it back.
It plays to their benefit, and they can test themselves against those teams. That's the point.
I agree with you. I agree with you. And by the way, that's a rare occurrence in college football. But the Irish are the one team. You lose to Georgia early, fine. Beat Michigan. By the way, there's a realistic opportunity. The Irish are going to play 2, not 1, but 2 top 5 teams on the road.
Yeah.
No one else can say that this year, unless you're in the SEC. I think any other league, you cannot say that. Yep. So they actually have a real opportunity ahead of them. Chase Claypool, I'm hearing wonderful things about. The defensive ends for the Irish look like studs. And again, it's Book. Is Book going to play like he did before his injury, or is it going to be the Book that we had in the second half? Well, time will tell. The other teams are captain obvious this year. We kind of alluded to it. I couldn't watch on my phone the Browns game, so I watched the Clemson game. Clemson, everybody's going to talk about Trevor Lawrence, and he's very good. This ATN might be the Heisman winner. He is so good. Clemson is, in our era, Jared, in the 80s and late 90s, it was Nebraska and Florida State and Florida, Miami. These are teams that just reloaded. In recent years, still the Florida States. Right now, that team is Clemson. Yeah. Where you just go, I know they graduated a bunch of kids, but look at all these new parts coming back. And to have ATN and Lawrence as your backfield, Jared, Clemson's going to be hard to beat. They may not lose a game again. They're going to be tough.
I can't argue.
The only thing I would be worrisome, which I saw a little bit in game 1, I'm sure it got brought up in the tape room, they have to be worried about getting soft. And what I mean by that is don't read into your press. Don't read into that stuff. Play the tape. The only other thing I got for Clemson.
That's on the coaches. That's on the coaches disciplining that team.
Yeah, and he's a great coach. Dabo Swinney can coach.
Yep.
Here's the only thing I would warn, and I'm interested to see. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I really feel this way. I think A&M next week, even though they go to Clemson, is going to give a game to Clemson. I think that is a tricky game for the Tigers. That is the one team who they're going to play. It's like, yes, they may not have the exact elite level, but they have athletes at A&M. And they're going to roll them out, and they are fast and they're big. So they are not going to be intimidated by Clemson. They are not.
Any sleepers you see in this top 25 that could surprise some
A&M,
folks?
I just mentioned them.
Right.
I think A&M is one of those teams I would really watch out for. I thought they improved as the year went on. I think it's more this year to me. It's like, yeah, everybody loves Georgia. That's great and cool. But are they really going to beat Alabama in a big spot, right? Alabama's that team everybody's been talking about, but they lost a stud of a player and linebacker. Are they going to be able to? By the way, Alabama has 2 linebackers out. They're playing true freshmen. Yes, it's Alabama, but that's not easy. It isn't like they play like all these cupcakes every week. So that's a challenge. I think Oklahoma's interesting. I'm not as high on them as other people. I think Jalen Hurts going to Oklahoma and playing in that system, yes, it will give him some benefits. But Jared, those are daunting. It isn't like you're going from like Alabama to Alabama Southern. I mean, Oklahoma, they want to win big and win big now. They have back-to-back Heisman Trophy winners at that spot. Mm-hmm. I think Oklahoma's another team I'm cautious about. That would be my word, cautious about. When it comes to what I've been seeing this year, though, Jared, and everything I'm reading, even with the injuries that Alabama's had, it's really Clemson, Alabama, and everybody else. That's how I look at this college football season.
Yeah, I mean, and that's how it's felt. That's how it's been. Where you've got these two teams that just these two teams that can dominate and can beat anybody. Then you've got a big handful of teams that could pull it off. Pull it off.
But that's why it's interesting.
But that's it. Outside of that,
right? That's why when you ask a sleeper, I'm like, the only one I see that people aren't talking about that are not in the top 10 is A&M. I think A&M could make a run. I really do. I think they could win. I think they could win the West if everything breaks their way. Now that's asking a lot, but if everything breaks their way, I can see them. They have Alabama coming to their place. Not impossible. Not impossible to win that game. I think all these other top 25 teams, like I guess I'll ask you too. Am I sold on Texas after one Sugar Bowl win against Georgia?
Well, that's exactly how I'm looking at the top 25. In my eyes, there's more teams that I can see fall out of the top 25 than there are I can see moving up in the top 25.
Yeah, like here's another
like when
example.
I look at LSU, when I look at the Floridas, when I look at Texas, when I look at Oregon.
I see flaws.
Yeah, I see, and then the further down you go, it's even worse.
Well, right.
When you're looking at Penn State, when you're looking at Wisconsin, when you're looking at Sparty, Syracuse, is Syracuse really going to do anything different from last? I mean, it just doesn't. No,
well, they play
Nebraska.
They play in the right league. I think they're going to win some games, but again, like the only team is A&M. I think I guess here's the other one I would keep my eye on. And I would keep my eye on with. Surprised I'm saying this, but I will. I do think if they can really get a secondary running back to help out Dobbins, Ohio State has the athletes to make a run at this. There's no question. That's never been the question with Ohio State. Can they get through a whole season with a new coach? Is Fields the real deal? I think that is a lot of expectations I can't answer. So that's why with Ohio State. And Ohio State's not a sleeper. I mean, they're fifth in the country. I mean, that's not a sleeper.
Well, in Ohio State, they're like a fine wine. They get better with age every season. They at least
well said.
I'll say that. They could make something happen, but I will tell you right now, going into halftime here, still sitting at 28 and actually gave a field goal 28-3 now.
They took their foot off the gas.
They did, but I expect them to come out and score at least another 28. They've got to.
Yeah.
They've got to come out and do something here because I don't like how flat they've played for the end of that. That whole second quarter was just flat.
Like
and not flat in like they were taking like a chill way, but like flat like they weren't executing properly and it just wasn't.
Wow.
It didn't look all that great.
Yeah, and that happens a lot. Week 1 is weird in college football because I just think it's sometimes I'm sure some of these kids are like, we got this. Like you're gonna have to like either there's an earthquake or a tsunami, but we're not gonna lose. Like there's just no way we're gonna lose this game unless a historic weather event happens or hits. Here's the only thing I would go into this year that I love college football. There are, as the season like last year, I always felt like the bigger matchups were at the beginning of the year in November. This year, Jared, the college football matchups are a lot more spread out. Like Michigan's playing Notre Dame in late October. This year, again, Penn State, they're not playing them in October. They're playing them back-to-back weeks in November. So they're spreading these I don't know if that was done strategically or what, but a lot of these matchups now are very spread out, where they used to be, let's play them all in September and all in late November. And this year I'm kind of seeing more like, again, Notre Dame plays Georgia third week in September. Great matchup. I'm telling you, I don't know why people aren't talking about it more. A&M Clemson's a wonderful game next week. Wonderful game. Very, very good game. So I think that's the thing I take out of college football. The last thing to kind of tie this all up in a bow. By the way, Texas plays LSU too. That's a great game. Wow. So that's at night in Texas. That'll be fun. The only thing I would take about college football that I am enjoying, and I think I get more out of this, is it is the one sport where rivalries, tradition, and fans really go to. But Jared, it's nice that you don't always have to be in New York City, or you just have to be in the center of New Orleans. It's Baton Rouge. You can go to these little small towns like Ann Arbor. You're not in Detroit. You're in Ann Arbor. It's nice to do that, and even Columbus. For people who haven't grown up in that area, yes, Columbus is a huge city, but you don't feel that when you're in Ohio State. You don't really see the buildings. You just see the big horseshoe, and and it's off 315. You get these nice little pockets, and I love that about college football, and that's why I get into it so much. It's not Chicago, Illinois. It's South Bend, Indiana. I love those kind of things, and it brings a whole new. I just think it's great.
I mean, look where Penn State plays.
Oh my God, middle of fucking nowhere. Purdue too. Purdue, West Lafayette's not easy to get to. But that's to be said. I think it'll be a fun season. Don't get too caught up if it's Clemson and Alabama. That's gonna be the talk. But there's more out there that meets the eye. Yeah. You get in these games, it gets fun. I think the one thing that again I will go to is the only thing that I got that I do like too, Jared. I don't know if there's a clear. Here's your Heisman winner early on. And every year it feels like we always got last year was Tua. From week 1 on, did you think anybody else except for Tua was going to win the Heisman?
I'm pretty sure. By the way, I told you I didn't think it would be Tua, if I'm not mistaken.
You might have. And by the way, you were right. Kyler Murray won and I was wrong.
I don't think I called Tua. But I still was surprised when what's his face.
Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray. Yeah. But yeah, that's college football in a nutshell. We'll do a lot of these talks. Please pay attention to the Facebook and blog. I'll do a lot of picks so people can lose their money, hopefully win. I do like my under-over picks. And by the way, I just want to state for the record, my baseball picks, the White Sox have to win 15 more games. There's no way that's happening. The only team that I'm worried about is Milwaukee. I think Baltimore's going to go under 59.5, so I'm good there. And the other 3 are locks. The A's, the Rays, and the Blue Jays are way overs and way under.
Well, if you paid attention to Andy's picks early on in the season,
you would have won money.
Yeah, you'd be up. You'd be in the money right now. And,
you're welcome, audience. You're welcome. I'm patting my own back here, being a complete jerk. Last thing, and I'm done. I really am interested. I know I always say that, then I'm not
lying sack of shit.
I know, like sack of shit. But this time I am done because I want to go jog and drink a lot of fluids.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna go crack a beer here. And I've got barbecue. I got to plan for. I got folks coming over. I got to plan for a barbecue. I got a lot of stuff to do as soon as we wrap up, and I got to edit this show and get it up. So
get it up. Last thing on the tribe, I think Jared hit it, and I want to hit it one more time. I think the expectations have come down, but there are some good stories coming on Sunday with Cookie. I think you'll see some other stories. I think Jeffrey Rodriguez will help. But again, do I think they're in a big run? I don't, if I'm being honest. But that doesn't mean that this team still is not fun or likable. And I don't want to be too hard on the tribe. I love this team. I love Francona. I think sometimes it's easy to get into the weeds of negativity when things don't go your way. I do love that team a lot. I really do. These guys are fun guys. This is Kipnis' last run, by the way, probably. So you should enjoy Kipnis as well. And next Monday, we're going to do a show. So that'll probably be out on Tuesday. It will be all whatever happened in college football. But yes, head to toe Browns. Whatever happens to the roster, the last 2 games, getting you ready for the NFL. We'll do some more picks, getting you all ready for the NFL season. So that'll probably be out Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. And again, college football wrap up. We'll do a touch on the tribe, but it's going to be Browns focused, to be honest with you.
Boy.
A lot on rosters and trades and everything else that happens between now and Monday.
I got to tell you, Andy, I've noticed we've got a lot of new listeners, a lot of new folks from different areas across the country tuning in to this podcast, and I just want to welcome them. Shout out to you guys, however you found us, whether it be through that article with the Ringer or whether you're just looking for a decent Cleveland sports podcast to listen to. We're glad to provide you with that service for free, of course. So shout out to you guys. Thanks for listening. If you aren't following us on social media, go ahead and give us a follow on Facebook, facebook.com/Cleveland and Beyond. You can also hit us up on Twitter at CLE and Beyond. Shoot us an email, Andy and Jarid @gmail.com. Jarid, of course, Jarid. You can listen to the podcast on Google Play, Stitcher, iTunes, your Alexa device, wherever podcasts are available. You will find Andy and Jarid, Cleveland and Beyond. And of course, this podcast is brought to you by Waiting for Next Year. Check them out. Original Cleveland sports reporting on waitingfornextyear.com. Andy, let's go Buckeyes. Hopefully Notre Dame can surprise you this season. Lord knows it's not going to be Purdue. And I'll leave it.
So last night there was a game or an event, whatever you want to fucking call it.
Here we go.
Where the Nevada
Feel free to
Wolfpack
shut off the podcast here if you don't want to listen to the rant.
And here's what happened. So Purdue was up 17 points. You would think any normal
I was going to end the show. But here we go.
But would win this game. But no, not Purdue. Purdue loves to fumble, throw interceptions, and play like complete. What an awful look. I don't throw this. I don't try to do this. You can check my Twitter feed. I lost it. I don't try to do that. I did. I went fucking crazy. That was a bullshit. It was awful. These are kids. I get it. But let's be fair. Win the goddamn game when you're up 17 points in the third quarter. It's Nevada. It's not Nevada, Las Vegas in basketball. It's Nevada.
And
Kaepernick,
now
I have no idea.
Know why Andy drank last night.
So, well, no, actually, that was not. That was actually postpartum watching the game going, because I kept saying, I'm so tired. I just want to go to bed. I'm so tired. I just want to go to bed. But Sindelar kept throwing interception and interception. The one thing, though, I will say, because no one cares about Purdue football. I know I love Purdue football. I'm not a realist. I know no one cares. I love Jeff Brom. His press conference afterwards was appropriate, and he said everything. He goes, I have to do a better job, and this is not acceptable. Jeff Brom can play for my team any day of the week. Now, he can't do that shit again with this team. But I did love his post-game rant. I thought it was great. I love Jeff.
He's Andy Billman.
Fucking
He's Andy Billman.
You lose me like that. I just don't understand.
He's Andy Billman. I'm Jared Watson.
God, the other play today.
Andy and Jared.
This game's over, so I don't need to watch FAU. By the way, Buckeyes cover the spread.
Andy and Jared, Cleveland and beyond.
Nevada.
We'll talk to you again soon.
Unfucking.
Take care.
Awful.